The sound of pickaxes striking stone echoed through the abandoned mine shaft as Ashley Foster stood in the flickering lamplight, her weathered hands trembling as she held the geological survey report. $120 million, she whispered, the words barely audible above the distant rumble of machinery. All this time, they called it worthless land. Behind her, Nathan Green emerged from the deeper tunnels, his face streaked with dust and sweat, carrying samples of the rare earth minerals that would transform not just her life, but the entire mountain community that had scorned her for so long. 6 months earlier, Ashley Foster had stood on the sagging porch of her inherited farmhouse, watching the last of the moving trucks disappear down the winding mountain road. The October wind cut through her thin jacket as she surveyed what the townspeople of Cedar Ridge had mockingly called her inheritance of shame. The two-story structure leaned precariously to one side, its weathered clapboards siding gray with age and neglect. Shingles lay scattered across the overgrown yard like fallen leaves, and the front steps had rotted through completely. Her great-aunt Millicent had left her this property in the remote Colorado mountains, along with a cryptic note that simply read, "The land remembers what people forget. Look deeper than the surface, child." The locals had snickered when news of the inheritance spread through town. Ashley could still hear their whispers at the general store, their cruel laughter echoing in her memory as she stood alone on that first day. "Poor city girl doesn't know what she's gotten herself into," old Mrs. Patterson had cackled to her friend at the post office. "That place has been worthless for decades. Nothing but rocks and weeds up there." Millicent was half crazy, living up there all alone with her wild theories about treasure in them hills. Ashley had driven up from Denver with everything she owned packed into her aging Honda Civic, fleeing a life that had crumbled around her. The marketing firm where she had worked for 8 years had downsized, eliminating her position along with dozens of others. Her apartment lease had expired, her savings were nearly depleted, and at 32, she felt like she was starting over from nothing. The farmhouse, however dilapidated, represented her only option for shelter and a chance to figure out her next move. The first week had been a harsh introduction to mountain living. The electricity worked sporadically. The plumbing consisted of a hand pump in the kitchen that drew sulfur-scented water from a well, and the heating system was nothing more than a massive stone fireplace that seemed to consume wood faster than she could gather it. Every morning brought new challenges, from mice in the pantry to a leaking roof that turned her bedroom into a collection of strategically placed buckets during rainstorms. The townspeople made no effort to hide their amusement at her struggles. When she ventured into Cedar Ridge for supplies, conversations would stop abruptly, replaced by barely concealed smirks and knowing glances. The hardware store owner, Richard Walker, would shake his head sympathetically while overcharging her for basic tools and materials, muttering about city folks who didn't understand mountain life. "You might want to consider selling that place," he had suggested during one of her visits, his tone dripping with false concern. "I know a developer who might take it off your hands for the right price. Course, that land ain't worth much, but it'd be enough to get you back to the city where you belong." Ashley had politely declined, though doubt gnawed at her during the long, cold nights. The isolation was overwhelming, broken only by the occasional visit from Nathan Green, the quiet man who lived in a cabin about 2 miles down the mountain. He had appeared one morning without invitation, carrying an armload of seasoned firewood, and wearing the weathered expression of someone who understood hardship intimately. Nathan was perhaps 40 years old, with prematurely gray hair and hands that spoke of decades spent working with tools and earth. He rarely spoke more than necessary, but his actions demonstrated a kindness that the townspeople seemed to lack entirely. He would arrive unannounced to help with repairs, bringing supplies and expertise that kept Ashley from complete despair. "Your aunt was a good woman," he had told her one evening as they worked together to patch a section of roof before the next storm. "Smart too. Smarter than folks gave her credit for. She used to talk about the old mining surveys, said there were things up here that nobody bothered to look for anymore." "Mining surveys?" Ashley had asked, pausing in her work to look at him more closely. Nathan had shrugged, his expression unreadable in the fading light. "This whole area was mined pretty heavily back in the 1800s. Gold mostly, some silver. But Millicent always said they missed the real treasure because they were looking for the wrong things." That conversation had planted a seed of curiosity that grew stronger with each passing week. Ashley began exploring the property more systematically, discovering remnants of old mining operations scattered across the mountainside. Rusted equipment lay half buried in the undergrowth, and she found several sealed mine shafts that had been abandoned decades earlier. In Millicent's cluttered attic, Ashley discovered boxes of documents, maps, and geological surveys dating back to the early 1900s. Her great-aunt had been methodically researching the mineral composition of their land for years, corresponding with geologists and mining engineers, accumulating evidence of something valuable hidden beneath the surface. The breakthrough came on a particularly cold November morning when Ashley was clearing debris from what she had assumed was just another collapsed outbuilding. Nathan arrived to find her staring at a section of exposed rock that gleamed with an unusual metallic sheen. "That's not gold," he said quietly, kneeling beside her to examine the formation more closely. "But it might be something better." Together, they carefully extracted samples of the strange mineral deposits, which seemed to run in veins throughout the exposed rock face. Nathan had connections with a geological testing laboratory in Denver, and Ashley scraped together enough money to have the samples professionally analyzed. The wait for results felt endless. Meanwhile, the mockery from the townspeople intensified as word spread about Ashley's treasure hunting. The local newspaper even ran a small article titled, "City Woman Searches for Gold in Them Thar Hills," complete with a photograph of Ashley looking disheveled and desperate as she carried rock samples to her car. The phone call from the laboratory came on a Tuesday morning in December. Ashley had been splitting firewood when her cell phone rang, and she almost didn't answer the unfamiliar number. "Miss Foster? This is Dr. Patricia Williams from Rocky Mountain Geological Services. I have the results of your mineral analysis, and I think you need to sit down for this conversation." Ashley's heart pounded as she listened to the geologist explain that her samples contained significant concentrations of rare earth elements, particularly neodymium, dysprosium, and terbium. These materials were essential components in everything from wind turbines to electric vehicle batteries, and they were incredibly valuable due to limited global supply chains. "Based on these concentrations and the geological formations you've described, you could be sitting on one of the largest rare earth deposits in North America," Dr. Williams had explained. "We're talking about a potential value in the hundreds of millions of dollars, possibly more." Ashley had ended the call in stunned silence, staring at her phone as if it might somehow take back the impossible news. She called Nathan immediately, her voice shaking as she relayed the conversation. "I need to see those results myself," he had said simply, "and we need to keep this quiet until we know exactly what we're dealing with." The next several weeks passed in a blur of additional testing, surveys, and consultations with mining engineers and legal experts. Each new piece of information confirmed the initial assessment. Ashley's worthless inheritance was actually one of the most valuable mineral deposits discovered in decades. The irony was not lost on her that the same townspeople who had mocked her struggles were now completely unaware that she had become, at least on paper, one of the wealthiest individuals in the state. She continued her routine of shopping for supplies and enduring their condescending comments, all while secret geological surveys mapped the full extent of her mineral wealth. Nathan proved invaluable during this period, helping to coordinate the discrete testing and providing the practical knowledge needed to understand the mining potential. He had worked in various mining operations throughout his life and understood both the technical and business aspects of mineral extraction. "The challenge isn't just having the minerals," he explained one evening as they reviewed survey reports by lamplight. "It's extracting them responsibly and dealing with all the regulations and environmental concerns. This kind of operation will change everything up here." Ashley had been grappling with exactly that realization. The discovery would inevitably transform the quiet mountain community, bringing jobs and economic development, but also disrupting the isolation and natural beauty that had drawn her to appreciate the land despite its initial hardships. The decision about how to proceed weighed heavily on her mind throughout the winter months. She could sell the mineral rights to a large corporation and walk away with enough money to live comfortably for the rest of her life. Alternatively, she could develop the resources herself, maintaining control over the environmental and social impact, but taking on enormous responsibility and risk. The answer came to her gradually as she spent more time exploring the mountain and understanding its history. Millicent's research had included detailed notes about the environmental damage caused by earlier mining operations, along with her vision for sustainable resource development that would benefit the entire community rather than just outside investors. In early spring, Ashley made her decision. She would establish her own mining company, partnering with Nathan and hiring locally whenever possible. The operation would prioritize environmental protection and community benefit, setting new standards for responsible mineral extraction. The revelation to the townspeople came in stages, beginning with the arrival of professional survey crews and mining equipment that couldn't be hidden or explained away. Rumors began circulating about mysterious activity on the old Foster property, and Ashley found herself fielding increasingly direct questions during her trips to town. Richard Walker was among the first to approach her directly, his previous condescension replaced by barely concealed curiosity and growing respect. "Heard you got some kind of operation starting up there," he said carefully. "Anything the community should know about?" Ashley had smiled politely, enjoying the role reversal more than she cared to admit. "Just some geological work," she had replied. "Nothing too exciting." But excitement was exactly what gripped Cedar Ridge as word spread about the scale of Ashley's discovery. The local newspaper, which had mocked her treasure hunting just months earlier, now ran front-page stories about the potential economic impact of rare earth mining in the area. The transformation in how people treated her was swift and dramatic. The same individuals who had whispered cruel jokes about the crazy city woman now approached her with deference and barely concealed requests for employment or investment opportunities. Mrs. Patterson, who had been particularly vocal in her criticism, actually brought Ashley a homemade pie and an awkward apology. "I suppose we might have misjudged your situation," she said, unable to meet Ashley's eyes. "Sometimes us mountain folk can be a bit set in our ways." Ashley accepted the apology graciously, though she couldn't help but notice how quickly people's attitudes changed when money entered the equation. The experience had taught her valuable lessons about human nature and the importance of staying true to her own values regardless of external circumstances. The mining operation began in earnest that summer, with Ashley maintaining strict oversight of every aspect of the development. She hired environmental consultants to minimize ecological impact, brought in the latest extraction technology to reduce waste and contamination, and established a community fund to ensure that local residents benefited directly from the economic activity. Nathan became her partner in both business and personal matters, their relationship deepening as they worked together to build something meaningful from the unexpected windfall. His steady presence and practical wisdom provided the perfect complement to Ashley's determination and vision. The first major extraction of rare earth minerals took place on a clear August morning, with Ashley and Nathan standing side by side in the main shaft as workers brought up the initial loads of valuable ore. The moment felt surreal, a culmination of months of hard work and planning that had transformed her life completely. $120 million, Ashley repeated softly, still hardly believing the geological survey estimates. The figure represented more money than she had ever imagined possessing, but more importantly, it represented vindication of her decision to stay and fight for her place on the mountain. The success of the mining operation brought changes to Cedar Ridge that extended far beyond Ashley's personal fortune. New businesses opened to serve the growing workforce, property values increased, and the town began attracting young families who saw opportunity in the economic revival. Ashley made sure that longtime residents weren't displaced by development, establishing affordable housing programs and supporting local businesses. She also honored Millicent's memory by creating a foundation dedicated to geological research and environmental conservation. The foundation funded studies of sustainable mining practices and provided scholarships for students pursuing careers in earth sciences. The mockery and dismissal she had endured during those first difficult months became a distant memory, replaced by respect and recognition as a successful businesswoman and community leader. But Ashley never forgot the lessons learned during her period of vulnerability, when she had discovered both the cruelty and kindness that people were capable of showing. Standing in the mine shaft on that triumphant day, surrounded by the evidence of her incredible discovery, Ashley reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The worthless inheritance had become the foundation for not just personal wealth, but community transformation and environmental progress. Nathan squeezed her hand gently as they watched the workers load another cart with precious minerals. "Your aunt would be proud," he said quietly. "She always knew this land had secrets worth discovering." Ashley nodded, thinking about Millicent's cryptic note and her years of patient research. The land had indeed remembered what people had forgotten, revealing its treasures to someone willing to look deeper than the surface and persist despite ridicule and hardship. The sound of machinery and voices echoed through the tunnels, a symphony of progress and possibility that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. Ashley Foster, the city woman who had been mocked for inheriting a worthless mountain farm, had uncovered not just mineral wealth, but a new understanding of her own strength and capability. As they emerged from the mine into the bright mountain sunlight, Ashley felt a profound sense of gratitude for the unexpected path that had led her here. The challenges weren't over, and the responsibility of managing such wealth and its impact weighed heavily on her shoulders. But she faced the future with confidence, supported by a community that had learned to see beyond surface appearances and a partner who had believed in her potential from the very beginning. The transformation was complete, not just of the land and the community, but of Ashley herself. She had arrived as a desperate refugee from urban failure and discovered that she possessed the resilience and vision to turn adversity into triumph. The $120 million secret had been worth far more than its monetary value, providing lessons about perseverance, community, and the hidden potential that exists in the most unlikely places.